You're all set.
All right. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GL Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Medfield's Board of Health is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance by members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to and view this meeting while in progress may do so by following the instructions on the agenda and meeting notice. All right. So I think the main agenda item today is the plans for the special town meeting. And we have the town moderator, Scott McDermott, has joined us.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for being here.
I think maybe a good way to start is I think the rest of the board knows I've had a couple meetings with Scott and Christine, but we thought it's good. This is an important thing to get everybody's take on. So I want to make sure that if the rest of the board had ideas or concerns that I hadn't thought of, that there would be an opportunity to bring those forward. And maybe the best way to proceed is, Scott, to give sort of a rundown of the meeting and the plans that you have in place at the moment, and the sort of issues as you see them.
Sure. Hello, everybody. Thanks for being with us today, and thanks for all the work you guys have done over. This is, as you know, we've done 2 outdoor town meetings since this all began, and now we have the, with the continuing situation, we have probably the most compelling town meeting issue in a generation when it comes to driving civic engagement. So we're expecting to have a significant sized crowd come on Sunday the 7th. So the selectmen designated a Sunday afternoon, which I thought was a good decision, at noontime, so that that's what we're locked into. The reason that today is important, and the reason I'm really very happy that you guys were able to connect with me today, is because tomorrow night I'm going to go before the selectmen, and I'm going to be presenting my proposed procedures and guidelines for the way this is all going to work. It's hard to believe, but as of yesterday, that we're within 3 weeks. But the reason that's important is because tomorrow night they're also going to open and close the warrant, and therefore at that point, when that warrant closes, that's kind of when I always think it officially passes over to me now. The selectmen they've set the date, they've established the warrant, and we will know, precisely the activities that will be undertaken at the town meeting. Of course, at an annual town meeting, this activity happens months before the town meeting. The warrant is published generally in January. Normally by early February, it's closed. We have an opportunity to be able to publicize. But in this instance, for a lot of reasons, including reasons that have to do with public health, we're now in a kind of a tight time frame. So tomorrow night, in the selectmen's meeting, I will, and I think this is still. Can you guys still hear me?
We can hear you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so very, very timely. So what I'm actually looking forward to tomorrow, Christine and I will meet again, and I will be sharing with her the proposed guidelines for the meeting. We just came back from the high school where we met with our usual compatriots and collaborators in setting up the town meeting, people from the school department, Marion Benaldi, the town clerk's office, Medfield TV, our technology folks. So we spent about an hour and a half kind of running through, looking at all of the sites and the venues over there. So that's, I'm actually looking to try to see what guidelines I can get today from you. We've spoken to Steve. We've talked a little bit about that. We know that we want to be safe. We also know that, we have this date, November 7th. So At the moment, we have looked at, we have multiple venues within the school, that we have looked at. And we are going to kind of lock down a plan depending upon this conversation, also conversations with our technology team as well, to make sure that we can kind of pull it off at these various satellite locations that are going to be designated. Everybody will register centrally. Everybody, registration is the first and key element. Marion Benaldi, Christine, and I talk a lot about making sure that we get everybody to the meeting and get them appropriately registered so that they can sit within the town meeting. The town meeting is actually, it's not just an event, it's an entity. It's a thing, like a legislative body. And so it's very important to ensure that the people sitting within the town meeting are either registered voters or they are designated as visitors. And so we've developed a process. We think we're going to be able to get people registered and ultimately get distributed to the gym first. The gym is still going to be the studio, for want of a better expression. And when I was in there, I mean, that's where, that's where a presentation will be provided by the school building committee. And that's where the warrant committee will be commenting on the motion itself. That's where the selectmen will have an opportunity to comment from. And then after that, we have our usual microphones in there that will be open to opponents and proponents. Interestingly, at any of the satellite sites, one of the things that adds a little bit to the complexity is that the communication with those sites there's got to be two-way. People have got to be an opportunity for those people as well to be able to present. That's the nature of the open town meeting. It's a participatory kind of a body, and so we're trying to figure out all the logistics to get that done. One of the words that I've learned from Steve is de-densifying. So appreciating the value of de-densifying, and also Christina has been meeting as well with the seniors. We will provide space. Certainly the library would be open for people who had sensitivity and wanted to be in an environment where it would be less crowded than it would be in the gym. The plan now is to have overflow into the cafeteria, prospectively into the auditorium and other venues, and that's what we want to talk to you about as well. So we just looked at possible venue sites and trying to figure out how we get the technology to work. Numbers are a speculation, like I'm looking at a bunch of familiar faces, and I know that you've been to a number of town meetings. And I can just give you a little bit of what the data reveals is that, on a normal town meeting, we might do somewhere between 350 and 550 people or 600 people. We have had more than 1,000 people on a number of occasions. We've done special town meetings from everything to buy Redgate Farm. That drew a large audience of over 1,400. And we know that we had over 1,000 people who were in attendance. I think we had 980 votes when we did the zoning a couple of years ago in 2019 for the state hospital. So I don't know what the numbers are going to be. I did Marion was nice enough to go back and do the research, provided numbers all the way back through the last compelling generational vote that the town had when we were funding the switching of our high school and our middle school, and we had Memorial School mixed into that. And that process had a bunch of complexity, if you remember, having to do with a town meeting followed by a vote, followed by a revote, and then they had to do another special town meeting because some of the numbers had changed. And at the final one of those, the number of people in attendance was about 2,500 people. And the logistics in those days were just to pack as many people in as many classrooms as possible. And they packed every classroom in the school. And they only had one-way communication. All you were doing was watching it projected through Medfield TV on TV sets. And there was no provision made for people to be able to speak in the satellite rooms. There was barely any communication with the satellite rooms whatsoever. Under today's standards, we've hired a contractor who will help to produce an event where I will be able to connect with designated satellite rooms. I'll have a assistant moderator who will be appointed to help me keep order in those various rooms, but also to be able to communicate back to somebody that I anticipate will be standing near me to tell me what is going on in the various satellite rooms. And as I move from opponent to proponent, in the speaking, I'm not only going to have to move from opponent to proponent at the two microphones before me in the gym, but at these other venues as well. So that is, Steve, I don't know if that's helpful in terms of, where our thinking is. I mean, for me, there's 4 parts when it comes to, we get everybody registered. Ultimately, there's a presentation of the motion. There'll be a commentary by the warrant committee and the selectmen, and then we go to what I call discussion and deliberation. That's what makes it a town meeting. I have to distinguish for a number of our folks in town why it's different than the ballot that's going to be taken a week later. And then, in fact, having a ballot a week later, I think is advantageous to me, because I'm able to point to the fact of how they are different. And I would encourage everybody to go. And if what they want to do is to go and cast a ballot, they'll have that opportunity a week later. If what they want to do is to participate in this direct, democratic, participatory self-government exercise that we do with all its imperfections, then they're going to have to, there will be discussion and deliberation before we will ask people to cast a vote. So looking for questions and/or looking for, what kind of guidance, you can provide to Christine and I as we spend some time tomorrow, just being prepared to tell the selectmen what we intend to do, subject to change, always subject to a little bit to other variations having to do with attendance and what we learned. So questions?
I mean, just maybe we could just add on some of the things that we've already discussed and are somewhat settled in terms of COVID precautions.
Yes.
I think one of the things that you mentioned is that we don't know exactly how many people are going to be there, but we're expecting it's going to be on the larger side, right? So we're expecting over 1,000, and it could be as many as 2,000 apparently. So it's a lot of people.
Yep.
And I think you had said that the duration to expect roughly would be 4 hours. So from an
Yeah, it won't be. We don't know how long the count is going to take.
Yeah.
To the extent there are variables associated with that, but I am going to be emphasizing from now till the town meeting that this is the closing argument on this issue, right? So we have to make a decision. It's hard for, this is a complex decision. There's a lot of complexity around it. It's legitimate complexity. I've been on the edge of it, watching it now for how long? For well over a year. It's all its form, and I think it's one of those decisions. It's a big budget item. If we have a town budget of 75 million and we're talking about a school building for 82 million, in anybody's home or in any business, when you were making that kind of a commitment, that would be a big budget item. So it's important to give it its appropriate strategic consideration. So, Steve, yes, in terms of the precautions that are kind of expected, it's in the school building. So, anybody in the school building will have a mask. So that's, I think, an accepted precaution. One of the issues that we'd like to get your definitive guidance on had to do with who would be, we encourage everyone to attend. We like to provide within the town meeting environment. We want people with young children, and we want our seniors to be able to come, and we want them to be able to feel safe. But one of the issues that we can talk about a little later is that we get a lot of questions, commentary around being able to bring small children to town meeting. And, I have tended to take the position that, because we are an entity, that this is a legislative body, and with the legislative body, come open to our registered town meeting, our registered voters. And so we've always taken that, that's a position that it's not open to children. We encourage, as much as we can, everybody to come and to make provisions for that. But in talking to Steve last week, and I guess we would be looking for your affirmation, I can't imagine that it would be considered by anyone to be a good idea either way to bring your child into that kind of an a forum with in the thousands of people there. And also these kids are unvaccinated, right? So you don't want to bring them into an environment where I'm encouraging, everybody who's a registered voter to come and letting them know we're going to try to do this as safely as possible. So, we've talked about that issue. I know that the PAC and I think others are doing the right kind of organizing efforts to try to provide babysitters, to provide childcare services to folks who need it. Networks have been established. I'm not a part of that. It's not being offered through the moderator, but it certainly is being encouraged by the moderator. I'm looking out at a couple faces that might remember the fact that when we went through that last generationally compelling thing, I was trying to remember in the mid-90s how old my kids were, and it's it's a challenge. We think that we have made the right decision to try to make that easier for everyone, for seniors to be able to get around and do it during the daylight. And we have all the provisions in place to have reserved parking in front of the school, a bus from the Council on Aging if they would like to get a bus, assistance once they get to the school. And we also hope that a Sunday afternoon at noontime is going to be a better time for young families, young mothers, young parents to be able to get some childcare for a few hours. Now, Steve, all of that is circling around on the question, which was how much time, right?
Right,
so,
right.
So, there will be a time when things start to repeat themselves, and when people who feel, exceptionally passionate, who need to have themselves heard, they will largely have had an opportunity. Normally, what I would do is I would reduce the amount of time that would be allocated to proponents as we go forward. But as I said, I'm going to be, I will be encouraging folks to make a final argument, to be able to find the simplicity, on the far side of the complexity of this issue. Let's distill it down to these things. Let's trust and respect all the other people who are in attendance in terms of their ability to be able to collaborate in making this decision. I will be asking people to come to the meeting prepared. And there's opportunities to be able to be prepared on the town's website, the work that the warrant committee has done, so that people don't come and it's just too complex an issue to get, started at square one and get completely educated. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to wrap it up in a very reasonable time. I told someone today that I know that it's the right amount of time when half the people in the room think that I've let people talk too much and the other half think that I'm going too fast. If I could find that exact time, right at that point, then that's when I would call the question. So I'm hoping I'll be able to maybe do that. And that's what you get from the front of the room, is you get a little opportunity of the sense of the room. And it's actually easier at a special town meeting because you've got other considerations in an annual town meeting, like all the other articles that haven't been pulled. And you don't know how much time is going to need to be allocated for those. And I don't want to, I believe in kind of the balance anyway of this reasonable discourse that we want to promote, but also some expedience at the end of the day. So I'm hoping that the time frame that I gave you, Steve, is the right time frame to be able to get this done, beginning to end, have a good vote, have people feel that in good faith that the process was put into place to be able to provide for a presentation of the motion, deliberation and discussion, and a good fair vote. The votes have to be counted. So if we have multiple locations, people will vote in multiple locations, and those votes will need to be taken to a central location to be counted. Then I will come back and then with a simple announcement, as to what the result of the vote was. We do know that it requires 2/3. I think everybody on this call probably is aware of that. So this vote does require a 2/3 vote. So that's a super majority. And then the following Tuesday on the 15th, that's a simple majority for the town's ballot. One is essentially the appropriation, and one is the override, the Proposition 2.5 override. So they have different thresholds of voting.
So I think from the health perspective, the assumptions we're working with is that we're having something over 1,000, maybe as much as 2,000 people, that the duration that people will be indoors together would be something like 4 hours, give or take, and that masks are required for everybody. And the ventilation at the school has already been sort of upgraded for COVID because of the children. So we have that working for us. And to the extent that there are windows that can be opened and so forth, that could be done. And then as Scott mentioned, I think the other kind of accommodation that we're making to, because there's this balance, because you want people have a right to go and participate. And they don't, but they also, don't want to face an unreasonable risk. And so one of the things that we talked about was having some of these satellite spaces designated as, lower density. So they're not full to the brim, but there's actually some ability to have social distancing there. And that might be something that is a comfort for people who are concerned about, being in a big crowd in the gym for 4 hours, and that they may feel uncomfortable with that. But it sounds like it's going to be feasible to have some alternative large rooms in the school to accommodate those people. And I think one of the challenges that we talked about there is the capacity of those spaces and really the limited capacity of those spaces, and the nuanced messaging of trying to get the right people, to get that space going to the right people, not just the worried well. And if we just say, oh, do you want to be in de-densified space or not, we really wanted to have a message that says, if you have if you're at high risk of COVID, if you have concern, high risk of COVID because of your health situation, feel free to use this space, or something like that signals that this is, for people that really have a high risk, some comorbidities and stuff, not just you're sort of like, well, we all want to minimize our risks, we don't, but that's not what it's about. And the space would fill up too quickly. So, and I think for regular people in Medfield, probably being in a space like the gym for 4 hours with masks is not an unreasonable risk, where we have very high vaccination rates achieved. We have pretty low incidence rates. I don't expect that to change radically in the next 3 weeks. And I think I said to Scott before, it's not that, there could be an instance of transmission at this event. We can't say, no, there's not going to be any transmission. It's really a matter of, how likely is that? How many infections, how likely are they to be serious, and so forth. And I think my sense is, relative to the importance of the event, it's probably a reasonable risk. We have tens of thousands of people now going to Bruins games and NBA games voluntarily, and that's considered sort of a acceptable risk. And so, I think this much smaller event for a important reason in our town, the risk balance is probably acceptable in my view. It's I think we're in a somewhat of a challenge in some of the things you might think we'd want to do, because I think we can't really exclude people who are voters, even if they, we can ask people with COVID symptoms to stay home, which, obviously would be a socially responsible thing for them to do. But I'm not sure we can do we can't exclude people who aren't vaccinated or require negative COVID tests, and those kinds of things aren't really on the table for us to do. So, given the tools that we have to work with, I think the priority should be on, trying to separate out high-risk people and put them in the safest type spaces possible. I think one of the things that we've talked about before, which it seems like is maybe not feasible logistically, but would be advantageous from a health perspective, would to have one of these satellite spaces be an outdoor space, because we know that's a much lower risk of COVID transmission outdoors. But there are some challenges Christine mentioned around making that happen. So I think we have, yeah, go ahead.
If I could, Steve. So yeah, thank you. And that, that guidance, we heard as a part of this walkthrough that we just came from. As I said, we had outdoor contractors. We had outside contractors talking about our technology. So we did look at, an outdoor option, and there's a couple of factors. So that we also think would be a good option if we can manage it relative to three factors. One is the technology, one is the registration, and the third is be able to get voting done in that way. We can't go to the turf field, and we also run the risk of relying on that when weather could be a major consideration, that late in the year. One thing that we came to, when there was a time when we were thinking maybe we do this, we do this outdoors like we had in the past, and when the date of November 7th was chosen, I went and I looked at kind of past years of November 7th, and you guys are New Englanders, and it could be anything, on November 7th, although this fall has been a little bit different. So we have looked at that, and I would say that that's an option that we would do anything we can to try to implement if we can do it, and also make sure that we meet the requirements of the things that we need to do to execute, effectively on the town meeting. And then we would have the question of, who would want to participate, because it won't be the scale of the turf field. That would be for certain, because it might even include a tent rental, but it will certainly include, providing some audio visual. It would seats. We've got to find a space. We have to run fiber optic cables to all of these satellite locations. And so, we walked all the way over, I think, to the old practice field behind the middle school to find a place where they could anchor a tent. And it's just too far. It's just a quarter of a mile of fiber optic cable, I think, and plus we got to figure out how to manage it. So working within, those constraints, I think that we're all on the same page about if there was an alternative that could be provided and it could be managed. Now that would have a capacity as well.
Right.
So I don't know whether people might, if it's a beautiful day on November 7th, people might select that, that alternative first. And that gets us to the question that Steve, I thought was so interesting. I had never heard the expression, of the worried well, but I could see where, people are worried, and some people have different risk tolerances, and they have different concerns about their own health, and so that's a factor.
Yeah. Well, just I'll maybe say just one more thing. I see we have hands up so we can get input from everyone else. I just wanted to come back on the issue of kids, and when I heard that, I thought, and I think I saw nodding heads at the board, that's probably a pretty bad idea from a health risk perspective to have kids on site during the town meeting. It's just a lot more to manage, and it's a lot more bodies to spread disease around. So I thought there's enough time and enough notice on the meeting that it's reasonable that people ought to be able to figure out childcare arrangements.
I'm hoping, and one thing about the process, the two-step process, is that, worst case is somebody's not able to participate for one reason or another, or they're not sure about their own health on that particular day. they will have an opportunity to participate in a different kind of a way a week later. It's not
That's
like you're
true.
not participating in the process. You know, you could go maybe to an environment to be able to vote. So I think that's, you know, that's good. This is not the only time that we're going to stand up and register
Right.
what the sentiment of the community is regarding this project.
Good point. So I don't know, Carol and Melissa have hands up. Carol?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Scott, Steve, and Christine for all your work. I know that there are towns that have protocols, and I know Steve has reviewed them, and he's also an expert. You mentioned that masks will be mandatory. I certainly am in favor of that. You don't have to answer all these things. I'm keeping notes.
Yeah.
I would like to know that there would be some sort of SOP for reminding people to keep them on or enforcing that, because that could be contentious and take space and visualization from the issue at hand. So I would like to say, in my experience of my work in the state, it's important to have a plan for that. You probably already do, but I wanted to bring that up. I will also say that I appreciate the reference Steve made to ventilation. And I think that in every space, the windows should be open. If there's opportunity for fans, it should just be. I would also ask that, and I love the fact you hired someone. I know there's certainly ARPA money. That's exactly for these processes. And I agree with you, Scott. This is a vital meeting. And I want all people to feel comfortable to attend. So ventilation and spacing, and you have a hired person. But I think one of the other things I want to mention, and you've, I'm sure, have this all prepared, is that one of the towns I work with, to let people know ahead of time through various social media channels what those expectations are, and that, you know, masking and what the you know, there will be enforcement and reminders, and, you know, don't come if you have symptoms, those kind of things, which again, you don't have to respond to every one of these. I know Steve has probably talked about them. I also agree there shouldn't be children. I will say that one of the things I try not to ever miss town meeting, when you're thinking of registration, it's usually clogged up in that high school foyer. I'd say the less clogging that you can consider, the better. And the last, I think, important thing that I feel is that there should be some sort of an outside option, whether it be in a parking lot, or, because what I would hate, and I've been here 29 years through many contentious town meetings, is that for there to be, no matter what side of this issue people fall on, to say that, to as you say, Scott, so well, to not support the whole democratic process because one group or another felt there wasn't a comfortable option with COVID to be in a space like that. Yep. So those are my things, and I tried to be concise.
That was good. And in fact, I wouldn't mind that bullet point. I've got the notes of it, but all of them, I think of things that we're paying attention to, and we want to make sure we pay attention to. And we want to go ahead, with the guidance of the Board of Health. This is to do this safely. We've, the past two, there was a lot of great collaboration around what we needed to be doing, both a year ago, or this May and the previous June. So Melissa, did you have a question, comments?
Hi guys, thank you so much for all your hard work. Yeah, I did have a few things to add. Couple questions and a couple just bullet points.
Yep.
The questions I have are, what is the maximum capacity the gym, the library, the cafe can actually hold?
So I have all of those. Let me see if I can get them out. Give me a second.
And while you're looking for that, Christine, is the state saying that there's a maximum capacity of people per square foot at this point? Are we
No.
having to look at any restrictions? Okay,
There's
that's
no restrictions. So currently
Okay.
the gym would hold 1,300. The library
okay.
is approximately 175. The cafeteria is 284, and the auditorium would be 455.
And there's that room 125.
Yes, I'm not sure after our review if we're going to be able to use that based on its location.
Okay. All
But
right.
we're investigating other locations as well. But those are the larger
Okay.
locations that we're using.
Every satellite
Okay, so that
location, we would have to, we have to have a kind of an assistant moderator. We have to have a setup to be able to manage that. So to be able to go to bigger sites and create that de-densification, we hope is. But as I said, we don't know what the number of people that are going to be coming in who are going to want to register their vote.
right. Okay, I have a few suggestions. One might not be popular, but I'm going to throw it out there anyways. Whenever we enter a hospital facility, and I know this is not hospital that we're talking about, but we are talking about managing good mask wearing, is we Purell everybody, and then we offer sort of a mask that we know is proper. So one of the surgical masks with the 3 layers that has the metal part that sort of hugs the nose. I think that would take away a lot of the fears of people coming in with masks that are ill-fitting. So what I would be suggesting is that everyone Purell and grab a new mask on arrival to the town hall, to the town meeting. I don't know budget wise what that would cost to buy 2,000 masks, but I really think that would make just a safer environment, knowing that those masks were medically approved essentially. I would love to suggest having a separate check-in area. I don't know if that's something that is logistically able to be done for folks who you would say maybe you'd want to scurry them through to a safer spot. So you would say like, you would have a separate check-in area with a walkie-talkie, and you guys, I don't know how that works.
It's actually,
logistically, and that
Melissa,
might be too much.
Melissa, if I can just interrupt you for 1 second. Unfortunately, that's not
Of
going to be an
course.
option. It is something we looked at, but a single point of registration for accuracy. But Marion and I discussed with Scott today, making sure we don't have a bottleneck in that area. And so we'll be offering an earlier, we're going to open registration similar to when we did the town meeting outdoors. We'll open it earlier than we normally would for a town meeting to give people time to come in and not have to worry about standing there in the registration. So.
Okay, so you've taken care of that. I appreciate it. I did want to reinforce Carol's suggestion about keeping proper ventilation. I think Fauci said, that's like the number one thing right now is keeping those windows open if you're going to any, family events or whatnot in the next couple months. So that's super important. I talked to Roberta today just to, just give her a call and see what her hesitations are from the perspective of those mobility challenged or elderly. And she was just concerned about the long walk to the gym, but it sounds like we're going to have other options for a room. So that seems like it's a good opportunity for folks who feel like they were being left out of the process, which we definitely, as you said, don't want anyone to feel left out of the process.
That's a great point, Melissa. And we want to try to provide whatever assistance, because still the rooms are still going to be down through registration, likely down the corridor. The library is in that direction, as is the cafeteria. And we would only open, with the exception of, an effort to see what we can do around this outdoor space with some capacity. But if we were to go to the auditorium, that would only happen after we filled the other spaces. So it may be that we need to come up with, and Christine, you and I can kind of put our heads together about making sure we get the right kind of assistance to be able to support that. That is a long walk. I mean, that's a long corridor.
Roberta said that's first of all, the folks who don't want to take the bus system in from Roberta's COA feel then they have to park far away. Even those spaces in front fill up quickly. And then so they're walking from their cars to the registration, then they're walking from registration to the room that they're going to be.
What would you, any suggestions?
I don't know the high school as well as I would like to. You know, I in my mind originally was thinking of the middle school and how the library is right across from that check-in area, but I don't have a suggestion for a closer room. Kathy looks like she might.
Kathy?
Yeah, so I do know the high school a little better, but we can have all the wheelchairs similar to what we do at like graduation. We can have all the wheelchairs from all the schools there to help people. They could also, Scott, if you're allowing the library for that second space, they can go in through sort of the gym entrance, and we could have signs pointing. There's an elevator that goes right up to the library there. So that would be a shorter distance, or maybe the bus drops them off at that door. And they
The only problem is they have to come through that single point of registration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the wheelchairs, could be right.
That would be
there,
great. If we
and
could do that,
helpful.
that would be fantastic.
And I could certainly drum up people to help, transport also down there. As far as ventilation in the school, we may want to, if we're sending a reminder out to people, the windows have to be open in school buildings, so that you might want to remind people to layer, because it does get cool. Even the kids are cold, during, school days. So it would be good to remind them of that. And every door to every school has a Purell station. We generally haven't had kids change out masks, mainly because we don't want a bottleneck of kids when they're all coming in, and we don't want them taking their masks off. So that was sort of one reason we didn't do that entering, if you had people entering a hospital a little at a time, as opposed to, people right behind each other removing masks to put a new one on. That would be my only concern with changing out the masks right at the same spot, unless maybe they did that outside before they came into a building.
Well, I have to defer to you folks
Yeah.
about Melissa's suggestion about, I have got into healthcare
Yeah.
facilities where I've been required to turn and to take a mask, so it's not foreign to me, but I don't know. We're also asking people to be comfortable over the next 4 hours behind a mask. And I don't know whether that makes any difference. It doesn't to me, but. Holly, you've had your hand raised for quite a while. What's your thinking?
Well, my only question was, if people forget their masks, will you have some spares so they don't have to
Yes.
go all the way home or go back to their car?
Yes.
Okay,
No,
that's my only question.
we'll have the same ones. We did it when we did the town meeting outside. So we'll have boxes available for everybody.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I would suggest in
Perfect.
Kathy's concern of people changing them as when they have already entered the building, is you could have people outside, passing them out with a large barrel right there, and you can have them change them out before they even get into the check-in area.
But a lot of people have distinctive cloth masks and everything that they have gotten really comfortable with. They wear to work every day. And and there are some people that, I don't call it a mandate because I don't like it. I call it a requirement, basically, but that there is a mask requirement, but that they may be testy about it. I don't know whether we would be, if there's a benefit to be gained by having that kind of an interaction with people as they enter the meeting and asking them to take off the mask that they are comfortable in, and I just have to trust your thinking about whether does that reduce the risk in a way? Is it worth having that kind of dialogue with everybody entering? If people don't have masks, we would certainly provide them the appropriate mask. What's
Probably more
I
important that they
understand
wear
the
the
point.
mask appropriately. You see a lot of people wearing their mask below their nose. It probably would be more important that they wear the mask correctly, as opposed to, I know in the school system that we went through this, and you can't require people to wear a certain mask, but you can make sure that they wear it appropriately.
Okay, and we can
Yeah.
suggest to people, I think we can suggest to people that by having these, that if there's, that they have an opportunity to get a new mask. I know when I had my surgery in the height of all this, I was happy to always have a new mask because I wanted a mask everywhere.
Yeah. No, I think it's
wanted
nice
it
to
in
offer it.
my car, my pocket, everywhere. So the
Yeah.
more masks, the better.
No, I think it's a nice thing to offer it.
And I guess I would also agree that, I think Carol mentioned at the beginning that being prepared to do some kind of enforcement or encouragement of proper mask wearing. You know, like for a while when we were at the Patriots for the New England Revolution, for a while you had to wear a mask, and they had people going around and they'd hold up a sign that says, put your mask back on over your nose, you know.
Well, we're going to have technology. I'm sorry, Carol. I was going to say, we could have a PSA. I mean, we could,
Yeah.
we're going to have technology. We could project it right before the meeting, a reminder like they do in the movie theaters, right? Could have a series of reminders that come on just before we start the meeting about proper mask wearing and things that are educational. Carol?
I was thinking it may be an idea. I do not know what your plan with all this extra facilitation and guides. I almost think of when we all used to go, and you probably do it, parent night, and you had the student council or the athletes or the band, and they guide the parents because you didn't know what room was which, right? And so I'm thinking, in my work, we call on youth and to help us with messaging, and it might be a consideration that you engage young people in the sports teams or school leaders, and they have those signs or hand out masks so that people, I find, are less inclined to get angry at a young person. I'm not expecting anger, but if there's frustration, they may be better received by, Eric Ornberg and, all the coaches saying, we've got some young people on a Sunday that would help out, and they smile and, try to make it positive.
Okay.
Just an idea.
My only concern with that would be from a contact tracing point of view. I don't want to be keeping those kids out of school because there was an exposure. Ordinarily I would think that's a great idea, but that would be my only concern.
And in the past, actually, Carol, when I had a close affiliation with Richard Disorder, because he had a class and we aligned a little section of it on the town meeting. And I did enlist, people from that particular class. They provided some of this kind of support. So I like the idea, but hearing what Kathy, is saying, maybe that is an offsetting kind of an issue. We don't want to be the story. The moderator never wants to be the story, and we don't want town meeting to be the story either, right? So we want the vote and what happens next to be the story. So
We've seen where other things become the story, and we don't need that. So ideas, maybe there's some young college kids. It just seems
Vaccinated children would be okay.
well, if you don't,
So would you be working, Christine? We be working together around this PSA notion, the same kind of a handout that they did in Concord, which got us a long way there. That was good. The one that was circulated, and I've seen a couple others that I've downloaded. So to get that kind of documentation circulated in advance, and I wonder whether we should do some kind of a little short video that's a minute and a half long, maybe featuring the members of the Board of Health, just talking about, just all of these questions, boom, boom, and kind of in a rapid fire way that they know that this has been.
Just a reminder, we've had 2 town meetings so far during COVID, and we did put together guidance. So I will be balancing, using that and balancing, switching to indoor, but we do have guidance available that we can use.
there's a group, Steve's school's involved in it, in the hospitals, academic, they don't call it volunteer corps anymore, academic public health corps. And they've made many PSAs, and Mina's not on here today, but I can just see what else they have already
That'd be
made.
great. That'd be great. Does the moderator have to wear a mask?
2 of them.
One over is, I might come entirely masked. Okay, so I do need, I was driving today, and for the first time, I just had the mental picture of looking out at this large crowd and not being able to read facial expressions. Nothing new to those of you that are in education. I know that you've been talking about it. Some of my friends who are professors at BC were talking about a week or two ago about just how different it is to be, speaking to an audience where you can't be reading as effectively as you used to their facial expression. Okay, so there's which I guess would be true in reverse as people look at me. I don't have to worry about smirking as much and stuff.
We could get you a clear mask.
Good. Anything else that we should be thinking about as we put together these guidelines and procedures? And I hope this is a continuous dialogue, as we lead up to the town meeting. I really appreciate everybody taking the time. We want to do this right.
I just worry about the wording, about the room that's going to be used for comorbidities.
Yep.
Or how, I think that needs to be very thoughtful. What
Okay.
room, a room that's, because you don't want to say it's a safe space necessarily, because nothing right now is completely without risk. And you don't want to limit people or signal people out who feel their comorbidities could be different than someone else. Someone could say my comorbidity is such and such. I don't know how granular you want to get for that description, but I think it needs to be like a thoughtful presentation of the space that's going to be a little less dense.
Okay, well, that's great. Well, I'm so glad to have so many good, thoughtful thinkers on this call that can help me, because I wouldn't know where to, that designation there is very fine, I would imagine, around. So I would need a little bit of help as we frame that up. Christine, I don't know whether it steps it up a little, because although we had a lot of guidance for the outdoor town meeting, there needs to be that much more guidance, I think, as we gather people indoors.
So,
I agree.
as far as having like younger perhaps this academic volunteer corps has the ability to send over some students, or because I'm hearing about a lot of logistics. How are you asking for town residents to volunteer for all these, like guiding people, moving people, Scott? Or
Not at this time.
No, we have I will have more than the average assistant town meeting folks. We won't be having counters, but we will be having tellers who will be there for the counting of the votes. So I am going to recruit some independent people to be, participate with the chief of police and the deputy moderator and the town clerk in the counting of the votes. So that will be some separate folks. I think Marion is expecting to try to recruit a little broader spectrum, so we can space out and have a number of people so that we can move registration and avoid that clog. Carol, I do, it's kind of on my mind as an item here around this kind of guidance around the building, because we could have to switch over to, once we got to overflow at a certain level, we have to direct people in a different direction, and we have to have people there that would be able to help them be directed. And then we've talked about providing this kind of support and assistance with the wheelchairs that Kathy was referencing. And I don't know, we would need to get some folks that would be able to participate in that. I'd like to be able to have that be something. So if, getting people from the front door, maybe even from where they had to park, into the building and to do that. So let me think about where those folks would come from, but I just don't know. I mean, the natural place to go, vaccinated students who wanted to, I assume I would be able to say that, right?
there's also a medical
Kathy, would you say
reserve
that?
corps.
Oh,
We
that's not a
also
good
have,
news.
just, if I can interrupt everybody for 1 second, we also have, numerous department heads who are required by the charter to be at town meeting. So in my discussions with Marion, we'll be utilizing department heads for a lot of the moving around and where they should go in the building. So
Oh, that's
they're
great.
required, they're required to be there anyway. So I hate to see them just sitting in the visitor section when we can use them. So similar to how you saw our DPW director giving out water at the annual town meeting, you'll see them around the building, helping
great.
everybody out. Yeah.
That's great.
And it
Okay,
may be easier to use the medical reserve corps, Scott, like Needham has many Medfield people that signed up for their MRC, and I can ask them, certainly it wouldn't be Medfield people, but they vaccinate, they work flu clinics, they work COVID clinics. So
Yeah. That would be
there's,
great.
I can put you in touch
Yeah.
with them. We won't need anyone to do vaccines, but they have a lot of non-medical people that work for different emergencies or programs that come up in a community.
Please
And they're
do.
all quarried and not that, anyway, I'll
Yeah.
put you in touch
That's great.
with
Very,
with them.
very good. Very helpful.
The
Jeff,
only
any-
concern about that is you're just bringing in more people. That's my only concern
Right.
about bringing in a whole other group of people. And you're just increasing your numbers and your potential. I mean, it's a great idea. I love it. If we have people that'll already be there, I just think
Oh, yeah.
throwing another
Yeah.
50 people on that, you know, it's just, there is a risk concern with that, just for me. Just something to think about.
Very true.
Okay. Well, Christine and I will do a little inventory of how many people we think we would need to fill these various positions. We try to get a reading through the Council on Aging and, you know, on people that need support. I think that they would. We don't have a formal way of making people register in advance or anything like that, but we should work to try to get a number, you know, just to make sure that we can make sure that we have the support and assistance to be able to help everybody get to the gym if that's their choice, or to get to the library if that were to be their choice. You know, I personally love to look out, and I'd love to see, you know, the usual suspects. Seeing Ann Thompson and John Harney and Caroline Stanley, and I could go on and on. I don't want to leave anybody out, but you know, that's certainly part of the character of the town. And from when you stand up at the podium, that's the part that I like to look out and see the people who have been through this before and are still coming back. So I'm hoping that we get a lot of people, and new people too, people who haven't come to town meeting before, that, you know, we need to kind of explain what is this less than perfect, but pretty good way of making decisions all at one time by a town. As I said, directly, democratically, being able to participate as a legislator. You know, yourself, you're actually a part of making decisions, making laws in this instance, or making appropriations. It's pretty powerful, but I'm a fan. You know, so.
Christine, do you have, in the past, without COVID, people come with children, you allow it, but in this case, we've sort of now discussed it and said children are just, it's
No.
just not a great idea. Do you then turn them away? How would that work?
We have
In an
never
instance of people-
allowed, I think there's been some resistance. We've been surprised maybe, but, you know, so I don't think this is really a change of precedent, to be honest with you. There's actually a part of our bylaw that was put into place that allows for students age 15 up to their age of registering to vote, to be able to participate. And in the past, we actually had a designated student set, and kind of by implication, you know, the implication is that it's all registered voters except for those students who could join the visitor section, and not for folks who are younger.
Right.
So,
Years ago, when we had some votes, we had babysitting in a part, but not in the conversational places. So even if people might remember, oh, my cousin brought her children, they brought them because the Girl Scouts were babysitting, or the field hockey team, and they were in a separate place and not in the cafeteria or the gym, or right,
And
Kath?
Yep, it was the Honor Society.
yeah, the Honor Society. Right?
Aw,
Yep,
And,
but I
you
mean,
know,
if you're talking a 4-hour meeting, that would
Can't
be a
do that.
long time for kids anyway. You know,
no.
tough.
And
I was
by the
just
way,
more wondering, would you then say, sorry, we're turning you away? That was, I guess, the question I would.
well, we're
was
going to do a
asking.
lot of publicity beginning tomorrow night at the Selectmen's meeting, in which this
Good,
will be a
okay.
topic.
Yeah,
And I have a once the the article is framed, once they've closed the warrant, then I've got to start getting information out in all the usual ways, which would be through the patch. I normally will send something off to certainly to Pete, who has a widely spread blog. It gets to the Insider and any other places that, that are appropriate. Usually people post for me on social media. I don't post for myself on social media. So that would be done. And so I've got good relationships with the administrators of those sites because we know a lot of people are there and looking at it. And I'll have other guidance as well that won't just be about health or about logistics, that will have to do with decorum, civility, the tone by which we undertake our dialogue in this town. I tell people all the time, I believe it, that this is a special place, and the special nature of it just doesn't have to do with our quality education and our open space. I could go on and on. The people on this call, the volunteers, but it really does have to do with the way that we have engaged in Medfield for the 28 years that I've been in town. And it's around town meeting, but it's not just around town meeting, it's around Medfield Day. It's around, really a slew of all-night graduation. You could go on and on, depending on the way that we have rallied around situations in the past where families have been, had issues that they had to deal with. So that's what I take pride in. That's what makes it a special place. And I'm hoping that I can prevail upon the group to say, let's maintain that. I used to go to the Mass Moderators Association, and I'd listen to these stories, these horror stories of things that were going on in these other towns. And I'd say, I just, wow. And then, here we are some number of years later, and there's a little bit of a current of it, flowing through that is maybe fueled a little bit by ways in which people are communicating today that they couldn't in the past. It used to be letters to the editor, but I'm hoping we could turn that to a force for good by getting good information out and letting people then come in. And I'm also realistic that town meeting is not for everybody. In other words, that it's a little bit of a foreign way of governing, but we're governing oneself. It is participatory. It's self-government, and it's this is one of the vestiges that it's one of the purest forms that it really exists. And so, we want to continue to promote it. And down the road, there may be changes. I think there may be generational changes. And when I talk about it, it's always been preserve the core, preserve the best parts of it, which have to do with this deliberation, discussion, the engagement by a lot of people in town. And if we need to stimulate some change in the way it's done, we will do that over time. But we can't do it on the fly in the middle of COVID. We pretty much have to try to do it similarly to the way that we've done it in the past.
Scott, one more question, and I apologize because I don't know this. Do we get to the step 2 if step 1 doesn't pass, or no?
Yes. So for reasons that actually played themselves out 20 years ago, the vote will go forward. So no matter what happens at town meeting, we know that it's a supermajority threshold. So if the vote doesn't achieve the supermajority, there will still be a vote. And they're actually independent exercises. They're voting on different things. So there is a process by which things can be brought back and changed and the vote. So I think that the answer is going to be yes. And one of the things that will be encouraged from the podium is for people to participate in the second stage of the process, no matter how the first stage. It would be critical that if it does pass by 2/3, that it needs an affirmative vote, a week later in the majority. And it tends to be observation says it tends to be a little bit a different general population of folks that come to town meeting and participate in that and vote than might turn out a week later at the ballot. So.
Scott, I just have to say, I feel like you are a great leader and you do a very thoughtful yet, I don't want to say authoritative, but that might be that's the role. And I'm grateful we have you for this vote. And I appreciate that you've been so thoughtful and working with Steve and spending all this time. And I do feel that the more we can tell people what to expect, the better. And then you don't
Yes.
have any kind of background on that issue. And I just think, you know, having folks, I love Christine's idea, all town staff, you know, town staff, then you don't bring in outsiders, but to remind people of the SOP of the day and the masks and the kindness.
Well, I'm
So
looking
thank
forward to
you.
being able to communicate to the town a lot of what we've talked about and more in the next couple of days, because I think it's just been very difficult to get it, not to get ahead of ourselves. So until the warrant opens and closes, Kelly is actually getting texts from people. Will this be the only item, you know, that is on it? Is it a simple yes or no? Well, theoretically, you know, when the warrant closes tomorrow night, we will have an article, Christine, right at that point, we'll be looking at the article that, and then I'll be able to say, this is what we will be voting on. But because it's happening close to the town meeting, people are wondering, but let them focus on the decision that they, you know, that they're going to deliberate, and I will get all the information out there as regularly as I can in the next couple of weeks by whatever sources we can. And I'll ask, you know, folks in town to kind of spread the word that, you know, this is the way that we're going to try to conduct our affairs. And then, you know, we'll see what happens. It's promises to be interesting.
There is a 1 o'clock Patriots game during that time.
I know.
By the way, I just want to point out,
It's an away game and it's the Panthers.
will we be able to, can we simultaneously broadcast the Patriots game during?
You are not the first person to ask me that.
We have
Asking for a friend.
yeah, it's asking for a friend. Yeah. Well, maybe I will periodically, you know, speak to the score or something, but we'll see. We looked at a lot of options for times and dates in order to get this done. It had to be synchronized with the election votes, and because of the time of year that we start to get into the holiday. I mean, into the balloting and the town meeting. You know, doing anything between Thanksgiving and Christmas doesn't make sense on something this. So we and the warrant committee wanted to go through a process in order to be able to do their advisory work for the benefit of the town. So we wanted to provide them enough time. So this is how we ended up on that date. And we looked at, you know, we had done a Saturday, you know, in the past, and we get some objections to that. We looked at Sunday afternoon. We looked at doing it on Monday night. We looked at doing it on Monday night a little bit earlier. But I think we came to, you know, at least I hope what will be a good decision absent the Patriots. And who knows, by that time, how many weeks is that away? Gosh, they could be 2-6 going into the Panthers game. I don't know. We may still be interested in the Red Sox on that Sunday. That'd be even, you know, that could be the 6th game of the World Series. We haven't taken that into account. Oh my God, I just had that thought for the first time.
All right.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah. Do we have a motion to adjourn? I don't think we have another agenda item.
I make a motion, we adjourn. And I guess, may I just ask, are you going to, we're not obviously voting on this, but any of these suggestions, you're going to keep Steve informed on your final decisions? And there is no requirement for us to vote.
Yeah, but maybe we will do some kind of an exchange back and forth as we kind of, you know, go through some of these considerations that make sure. But you know, I think between Christine and I, we certainly have noted, you know, around the ventilation, around the, you know, the spreading out of the registration, the Purell masks, but not only the masks for the meeting, but a reminder of how what masks should be worn, and then the usual handout or something that would be communicated in advance that would provide the advisory. You know, if people aren't well, they should stay home, and all of the things and we will share that back, you know, with the Board of Health for any kind of suggestions as to how to make it either clearer or more comprehensive for sure. And
I'm hoping you come up with an option that some folks could be somewhere outside close and attend. Because
Right.
I just want the town to be able to say, oh, everyone had a chance, and no looking back over the process, if at all possible. Because
yeah,
it would-
well, yeah, and I feel very strongly, I want to provide that environment. You know, we live unfortunately in a time where, you know, I want people to think that an absolute good faith effort was made to try to do what I encourage, which is I love civic engagement. I'd like people to come and participate, but to try to do that, you know, at large numbers and do it safely and to be able to, you know, have a really a lockdown registration and a good process for voting and a reasonable process for, you know, the discussion. You know, I know at the end of the day, I always apologize in advance that I'm going to have to cut some people off. I expect that people will still want to go to the microphones, you know, at a time when the rest of the town is saying, you know, this is about an appropriate amount of time, and it's time to, you know, to call this to a vote. But we have many people that would want me to do that on my own initiative in the first 10 minutes, but, you know, I resist that because I do believe in the process. So anyway, thank you.
All right. So
So-
motion.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn the meeting.
Okay, Carol,
Yes.
Holly, Holly, can you vote
Yes.
to adjourn? Yeah, all right. Kathy,
Yes.
Yes.
Melissa,
Yep.
and me, yes. So we're adjourned. Thanks a lot.
Thank
Can I
you,
just say one
everyone.
thing?
Appreciate it.
Thank
Can
you.
I just make one reminder before I
Have a
let
good
you all
one.
go? Is that I'm going to be announcing this tomorrow night. So, you know, this is a recorded call. It's open and available to everybody. But just in terms of making it seem like it's happening in you know, kind of this sequence that we're trying to choreograph. You know, I don't know that some of the things we talked about have not been announced publicly so far. It'd be great to be able to, you know, to do them together tomorrow night. So I would just say in terms of, you know, the further communication with the town, if you're inclined to know that there's going to be communications that are going to be coming from me, and then after that I would get the encouragement of everybody to participate in however you like to participate around the town's dialogue, if that makes sense. But just knowing that I'm a day
Absolutely.
away, we're still working this, we're still thinking it. You know, as you could tell, I mean, this is the third meeting of the day. What we've met with the police chief. We're trying to do all those things. So by tomorrow, most of this, I think, will you know, be in the form of guidelines and procedures. Thank you.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much.
Makes sense.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.